Hello everyone, Nitiflor here, and today I'm going to explain how to lockpick the Fichet F3D, and I'm going to focus on the exterior cylinder. So I'm not going to go into details on how this lock works. There are two great videos on YouTube, one by CorrectJeans and another one by Tumblr, based on the work by Michael Huebler. I'll put the links in the video description. So if you don't know how it works inside, check those videos. CorrectJeans gutted his F3D, so you can understand better how it works. I'm going to concentrate on the picking process of this lock. So just a summary, basically there are 6 tumblers in this lock, and for each tumbler there are 2 gears. You have each gear has false gates, and you have to find the true gates for the 2 gears per tumbler. So basically there are 2 parts in the 2 phases in the picking process. Phase 1, where you pick the first gear for all tumblers, and phase 2, where you pick the second gear for all tumblers. To pick the first gear, you just have to rotate the tumblers, and to pick the second one, as the tumblers are engaged in the first gears, you have to rotate them left or right, translate them left or right, and you do that by turning, by rotating them. If you rotate to clockwise, the tumbler will move to the right. If you rotate counterclockwise, it will move to the left. I'll try to explain what I feel when I pick this lock and what I'm doing and what you have to do to pick it. The particularity of the exterior cylinder is that there is a key check pin at the back, and you cannot put tension if you don't push the key check pin. So you can, if you're careful enough, you just pick or push it one time by inserting the tool all the way to the back and applying tension. If you are careful enough and you release tension lightly, it should not pop back, but if you release tension too much, the key check pin will pop back and you have to push it again, and by navigating through all the tumblers, and if you already set some, it may unset them. So the hard part for the first phase of the picking process is trying not to release tension too much, so it's not popping back. For phase 1, to tension this lock, you just push. If you want to release tension to move out of the false gate, you just stop pushing, you release a bit your tension, and there is a spring which will push the core back. For phase 2, when the core is engaged deeper in the housing, the spring is no longer working, so you cannot just release tension. If you release tension, the core will just stay in place. So you have to pull manually the core out just a bit to not disengage the first gears and not engage the key check pin at the back. So to do so, what I made is a tension head which replicates the key retaining mechanism of the key. There are 2 pins at the top and at the bottom of the keyway. When you insert the key and rotate it, it prevents the key from being removed. As you can see, at the beginning, when I push, it will come back. Well, not when the key engages, but you will see with the tool it works. But for instance, now I have to find a way to pull the core. So I have a 3D printed head which replicates the grooves on the key and the holes. So when I start to pick the phase 2, I can use this head to pull the core. Without this, it's very complicated. You can try to do this by pulling the core using the head, the pick head, but you're going to mess up everything. So to make this tool, I used for the tip an ejector pin, which I filed and grinded using a Dremel in a V shape to fit the keyway and the tumblers. The tension head is 3D printed, and the other part are salvaged from a Chinese disc detailer pick tool. So let's start. So first of all, if I try to apply tension here, you can see that the core is not moving. You have to go all the way to the back, push the key retaining pin, click. Now you can apply tension. If I release tension too much, and by starting picking its etc., I can no longer push the core. I have to go all the way to the back and push this pin. So you apply tension not by rotating, just pushing. As you can see at the beginning, if I just release the tension, it pops back as a spring. So you can just release tension and the core will come out. So to pick this, basically, so as I said, there are 6 tumblers. First one is pushing against the second one, which is pushing against the third one, etc., all the way to the back. So basically, if you feel a tumbler, you have to feel the deepest tumbler binding. It's, for instance, what I mean is, if the number 4 is binding, you will feel that number 1, 2, and 3 are a bit hard to turn, and number 4 is harder, and number 5 and 6 will be you will be able to freely rotate them. So you have to find the deepest binder every time. So at the beginning, I'm just going to set all the tumblers to the same position and check if I can feel a binder by checking from the deepest one. So 6 is not binding, 5 is not, 4 is not, 3 is not, 2 is binding. So now I'm going to rotate the number 2. So to do so, I will release a bit the tension and try to release it just enough to be able to get out of the false gate, but not too much to not re-engage the key check pin at the back of the lock. The more progress you make, the easiest it is to prevent the key check pin from popping back because you're pushing the core farther. So 2 is binding, so I'll try to rotate it one step at a time. And for the first tumblers, the hardest part is to release tension just enough to be able to rotate them, but not too much, not to engage the key check pin. So you have to be very careful. Okay, so I failed to be careful. So I'll just put all the tumblers back into place and start again. So it looks like sometimes the wafers are not in gates, either true gates or full gates, so you have to rotate all of them to try to find the real binder, and it looks like, yes, it's still number 2. So I'm always rotating to the right to try to have all the tumblers on the right of the lock for the phase 2. Two is still binding, so we move it a bit more. Now it looks like 3 is binding. First one is binding. Every time you rotate a bit tumbler, check the next one to see if it's binding or not. One is still binding. Number 2 is still easy to move, so means that it's really the first one binding. Now 2 is hard to move, so 2 is binding as well. 3 is binding as well. 4 is not binding, so I have to pick number 3. Now number 4 is hard to move, so it's number 4. Okay, now number 5 is hard to move, so it's tumbler number 5. By rotating number 5, I think I rotated a bit the number 4, so I'll try to rotate it backwards. Okay, it worked. Number 5 is still binding. You still have to release tension lightly, just enough to be able to rotate the tumbler you want to pick, because if you release tension too much, by rotating the tumbler number 4, you may rotate as well the number 3 and etc. So now the last one is binding, so number 6. And if I did not mess up, or if nothing else binds after that, I'm going to enter phase 2. Looks like a boss fight. Okay, so... Nope, not phase 2. 4, 3, 2, 1. So the first one is binding. Wait, let me check just one thing. Okay, so the first one is binding. Oh, okay, so now I'm on phase 2. First one was not in the gate for the second gear, I think. So phase 2, I can release the tension, and the core will not pop back. It's not open. I picked all the first gears, and then I have to pick the second gears. So now I need to manually pull the core to be able to disengage from the false gate of the second gears to be able to move them laterally. Picking process is the same. I'm going to navigate from all the tumblers and try to find a binder. The ones which has all the tumbler is going to be engaged in 2 gears. It's gonna be in the through gate of the first one and a false gate on the second one. If it's in the false gate, the 2 gears will grind against each other if it's the binder. If it's not binding, it will move freely. So you cannot move far because you're in a false gate. But for instance, here I'm number 6. I can move freely. And number 5, it's harder to do. So I know that the gears on number 5 are grinding against each other. So the tumbler is pushing against a false gate. So I have to pick number 5. So I'll release tension a bit and try to move it on the right or on the left. Once again, try to release tension just as much as you need to be able to rotate the tumbler, but if you release tension too much, you will disengage from the first gear and you will start the phase 1 again. If you don't mess up during the phase 2, you stay on the phase 2 and you don't have to go back to the phase 1. So it looks like number 3 is binding now. I moved it to the left. Looks like it's still binding. Maybe not. We'll try to see if there is a harder binder. Okay, number 6, the last one is binding hard. So let's start to move it on the left. Okay, and it's open. So I was lucky for the phase 2. It looks like the tumblers number 1 and 2 were already on their good spot, so on the right. As I said on phase 1, I always pick clockwise and try to move the tumblers on the right of the locks, so on phase 2 I just have to push them on the left. And I was a bit lucky for the phase 2 as I had only 2 or 3 turn loss to place. So now the lock is open. I can turn it freely. The problem with this tension head is I cannot remove the tool from the lock because the key retaining pins are retaining the pick head, but I can probably do it if I push and pull at the same time. Fuck. Okay. Okay, it's open still. Nope. So while doing this, it disengaged probably one of the wafer. Looks like from the depth of the core, I'm still on phase 2, but so yeah, if I'm on phase 2 without this pick head in the lock, I cannot pull the core anymore. So it's a good example on why you need such a tension head. If you don't have the ability to pull the core, right now you just cannot pull it. You have to probably use the pick itself, the pick head itself to pull it. It will be really hard to do so. So here it is for the picking of the Fichet F3D outside cylinder. Let me remove this from the lock. Okay. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I'm not going to gut it because I have no idea how, and I don't want to destroy this expensive lock. But here it is, picking of the exterior side of the fichet, as some of you requested for a video in English. I already did a video in French. Now you have it in English. Enjoy, and don't hesitate to contact me on Discord or anything else if you have any question on how to pick this lock. Thanks and goodbye.